Beyond the Ashes, written by Anthony Harrison. Chapter 1, The Fall Begins. The sky was a sick color that morning, ash gray, bruised blue, smeared with smoke and silence. Michael stood on the porch of Elena's uncle's cabin, 2 hours outside of Oakland, gripping the railing with hands that used to hold blueprints, not bullets. The air was thick, but it wasn't fog, not this time. The TV signal had gone dead 2 nights ago. Before that, the news anchors barely concealed their panic. California had officially closed all borders. The president was presumed dead after the Eastern Bloc coalition breached D.C. Texas had seized oil reserves and declared a new sovereignty. There was talk of state militias, talk of chemical bombs in Georgia, talk of famine. But it wasn't talk anymore. From where he stood, he could see a faint black column twisting into the sky, east, toward home, toward his babies. 5 of them, Alicia, 17, his firstborn, quiet but wise beyond her years, Michael Jr., 15, all firing questions. Chris, 13, with a brain like a clock. Ava and Cairo, only 4, twins who just learned how to say daddy like they meant it. They were with Lisa, his ex, the mother of his children. She had her flaws. She also had no clue this war was coming, and he was here, 2 hours away. But now, with highways collapsing, borders turning into battlefields, looters outnumbering lawmen, that 2 hours felt like 20 years. Elena stepped outside, her arms wrapped around herself, eyes soft, her caramel skin glowing under the weak sun, hair in a messy bun, oversized hoodie drooping off one shoulder. She was beautiful, and in that moment she looked afraid. "You're leaving, aren't you?" she asked. Michael didn't speak at first. He just looked out at the smoke again, jaw tight. His voice cracked when it came. "I can't let them go through this without me." Elena stepped closer, placing her hands on his chest. "You might not even make it. You don't know what's out there right now." "I know what's not out there. Their father." Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't cry. Christina, her 14-year-old daughter, was inside sleeping. Elena couldn't afford to look weak anymore. They all had to be strong now. "I don't want to lose you," she whispered. Michael touched her face. He didn't want to lose her either. Not after everything they'd built, not after all the promises made on that same porch during better nights. Warm dinners, laughing kids, slow kisses under string lights. But there were 5 other pieces of him out there, scattered in a broken world. "I'm coming back," he promised, "with all of them. And with Lisa," that made her flinch. "Elena," he began. "Me an explanation," she cut in. "But don't pretend this." He leaned in, kissed her forehead slow like a prayer, and then their lips met, softly at first, then desperately, like 2 people who didn't know if this would be their last time. He tasted her tears. She tasted his fear. And then he was gone. Michael started down the overgrown road on foot. His backpack was light, a knife, a flashlight, 2 protein bars, a pistol with 4 rounds, and a bottle of water he hoped to stretch for at least a day. The highways were jammed with burned-out vehicles. Crows circled above like death's own messengers. He kept walking. The first night, he camped in an abandoned gas station, slept with his back to the wall and a pistol in his lap. He didn't dream. The silence outside was too loud for dreams. By day 3, he'd lost one of the protein bars to a scammer pretending to be a stranded father. By day 4, he was jumped by 2 teenagers with knives who took the rest of his food. By day 5, his legs were giving out and the radio signals were nothing but static. But he kept going. Alicia's voice echoed in his head, "Don't give up on us, Daddy, you promised." On the 6th day, he ran into Marcus, an old childhood friend he hadn't seen in a decade. Marcus had always been a street hustler, but now he was walking with a purpose, a rifle strapped to his back, and 2 other folks with him, a nurse and a mechanic. "Mike?" Marcus blinked. "Yo, Mike from 24th? Michael almost collapsed. They embraced like brothers at war. "Where you headed, man?" "My kids. Lisa's house. By the tracks in Eastmont." Marcus whistled low. "Ain't safe over there no more. Word is they started rounding up men and boys for militia." "It's bad." Michael's heart dropped. "I'm going anyway." Marcus looked at him, then nodded. "Then you're not going alone." They traveled together, through collapsed buildings and checkpoints, sleeping under tarps and eating wild berries. Marcus shared his rifle. Michael shared what hope he had left. And on the 8th day, they made it. Lisa's house was barely standing, but Alicia was outside, swinging a stick like a bat, protecting the twins behind her. "Daddy?" she gasped when she saw him. Michael dropped to his knees. "Baby girl." She ran to him, all 17 years of courage melting into a child's cry, and he held her like he never wanted to let go. Michael Jr. Came out next, then Chris. Lisa emerged from the shadows, gaunt eyes sunken but still strong. "You came," she said. "I told you I would." She broke. Not loud, not dramatic, just silent tears and a slow nod. Michael looked at all of them. "We're leaving now. I found a place. Elena's family, they've got a camp. We'll be safe." Lisa hesitated. You sure I'm welcome? No, he said honestly. But I'm not leaving you behind. And with that, they started walking back, this time as a unit broken but not defeated. The city burned. Ahead, the future was unknown, but for now, they had each other. And Michael? He had one goal, protect them, all of them, at any cost. Chapter 2, Stranger in the Camp. The return was supposed to bring relief. Instead, it brought tension so thick you could cut it with the broken edge of the machete Michael carried on his hip. The camp was quiet when they arrived. Hidden in the forested hills above Marin, it was a repurposed vineyard turned survival ground, protected by high fencing, motion lights, and the influence of Elena's family, mostly older black folks who once held tech jobs and land, now holding rifles and seeds. The wind blew cold over solar lanterns and salvaged tents. Christina was the first to spot them. She ran. "Mom!" she called, tears flying behind her. Elena dropped the tools in her hands, sprinted past the chicken coop and into her daughter's arms. But when her eyes lifted and saw who walked behind Michael, the warmth in her bones turned ice cold. Lisa. Flanked by Alicia and Michael Jr., the mother of Michael's children stepped cautiously onto the gravel path. Ava and Cairo clung to her legs. Chris walked behind, glancing nervously at the strangers watching from the cabins. Elena took a step back. Michael saw it, felt it. But there wasn't time to explain the thousand thoughts spinning in his chest. The only thing he could offer now was truth. He said, "Lisa's family didn't make it. I wasn't." Lisa looked down, eyes tired. She wasn't here to make a scene. She was here because survival no longer had space for pride. Elena looked past Michael to Alicia, who stared back with a quiet strength. Their eyes met, and Alicia gave her the smallest nod. That was enough for Elena to turn away. She didn't speak again until later that night. The family was placed in an empty storage shed turned sleeping quarter. It smelled of cedar and sawdust. Michael and the boys laid on cots made from tarps and foam padding. Lisa curled up on the ground holding the twins. Alicia stayed sitting by the door, back straight. She was watching the quiet way her dad avoided looking at Elena, watching how Christina, Elena's daughter, gave her side eyes but said nothing, watching how this world, what was left of it, was forcing strangers to sleep under the same stars and pretend they weren't angry. She didn't blame Elena, but she didn't trust her either. That night, Michael found Elena alone in one of the supply tents, separating beans with tired hands. Her curls were pulled back in a tight bun. Her face was hard, eyes low. He closed the flap behind him. Elena, she didn't look up. "You mad?" he asked. She laughed, a bitter, breathless sound. "Mad?" she said. "I'm trying to feed your children, your ex and mine, with 2 bags of black-eyed peas and half a rabbit. I'm too busy to be mad." He stepped closer. "You think I wanted this? Breaking. I think you didn't have a choice. That's the..." She finally looked up, and when she did, there was no hate, just pain. "I don't know how to share you, Mike." "You're not," he said. "She's the mother of my kids. That's it." Elena studied him. "But is it?" Michael took a breath, moved to her. His fingers touched her wrist, then slowly slid around her waist. "No woman has what you have," he whispered. "Not her. Not anyone." She closed her eyes. The weight of it all, war, loss, fear, melted under the warmth of his touch. Their lips met, soft at first, then deeper. Their bodies leaned in like 2 trees bending toward each other in a storm. She kissed him hard, pulling his shirt up, pressing her palms to his chest like she needed proof he was real. He kissed her back with hunger, lifting her onto the edge of the table, knocking over tins of flour and beans. She gasped into his mouth, biting his bottom lip as her thighs wrapped around his waist. The passion was raw, not just lust, but desperation, a need to feel alive, to escape everything beyond the tent flap. Their breath grew ragged, their hands frantic. He laid her down gently on a sleeping mat. She pulled him over her, fingers tangled in his locks, eyes locked on his. "I need you," she whispered. "I'm right here," he promised. The storm outside could wait. The next morning, the camp felt different, still tense, still quiet. But something was shifting. Lisa helped wash laundry in a bucket behind the barn. Christina offered to help Alicia gather water. Chris explored with some of the boys from another tent, learning to hunt squirrels with slingshots. Ava and Cairo giggled under a tree as they chased butterflies, like they hadn't just walked through hell. Michael watched it all from the hill above. Elena came to stand beside him, arms folded. "I'm still trying," she said. "I see you," he replied. She looked up at him. "And I see you. Don't lie to me, Mike. We might not survive long enough to fix lies." He nodded. Down below, Lisa was laughing softly. A man had walked up to her, tall, dark-skinned, bearded. She laughed again, touched his arm lightly. Elena turned to Michael. "Who's that?" "I don't know. You better find out." Michael smiled slightly. "Jealous?" "No," she said, then paused. "Maybe. Just a little." Chapter 3, Fault Lines. The morning fog hung heavy over the valley. A dull silence buzzed through the trees like an omen. The ground was too quiet. The birds had left days ago. Inside the camp, tension simmered beneath every polite nod and shared meal. Michael woke up early. Lisa was still asleep, her back turned, curled protectively around Ava and Cairo. The little ones murmured softly, dreaming peaceful dreams they didn't deserve to lose. He stepped out, rubbing his hands together for warmth, and spotted Alicia by the chicken coop, hoodie up, notebook open. She scribbled quickly, then paused. Her eyes scanned the camp like a general surveying a battlefield. Michael approached slowly. "You writing about us?" he asked. Alicia smirked but didn't look up. "Always? What's the latest?" She stopped, tapped the pencil twice on the page. "Elena's people don't trust us," she said calmly. "Christina's trying, but it's clear she feels like this is her mom's space, and we're taking up air. Lisa's trying not to seem like she notices, but she notices. And you, Dad, what about me? You're caught in the middle." Again. Michael didn't respond at first, just looked out over the camp as a few others began stirring. Smoke drifted from cooking fires. The sound of hammering came from the solar rig station down the slope. It looked peaceful from here. But Alicia was right. Cracks were forming. "People keep saying the world ended," Alicia said, still scribbling. "But I think it just exposed who we really are." A hand on her shoulder. "That why you're always..." She finally looked up at him. "Someone's got to remember it the right way." By midday, a murmur moved through the camp. Something had been spotted on the perimeter cameras. Movement at the tree line. Michael, Marcus, and another man named Reggie headed out with rifles. They found him kneeling by the fence, a slim man in ragged clothes, face dirty, hands raised. He didn't speak right away, just waited while they circled him. "I'm not armed," he said softly. "You with anybody?" Marcus barked. "Week ago. Got jumped by dogs down by the water." Michael watched the man closely. His eyes were bloodshot. Not from drugs, from lack of sleep, hunger, desperation. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lee." Michael froze. The name wasn't foreign. "You know someone named Lisa?" Lee looked up surprised. "Yeah. We traveled together a few days when it all went bad. Thought she died when that gas station blew." Michael lowered his weapon. "She's here." Lee's expression cracked open. Relief, guilt, joy, all at once. His knees buckled slightly. They brought him in. Elena didn't say much when she saw Lee, but her eyes lingered on Lisa's reaction. How she stood frozen when he entered the mess area, how her hands flew to her mouth when he called her name. She rushed to him. No words, just an embrace that said more than talking ever could. That night, they ate together at the long table. For once, nobody argued. But behind her fork, Elena's knuckles were white. Later, when the kids were asleep, she and Michael sat outside the storage room. "You didn't tell me she had someone," she said. "I didn't know," he replied. "She seems happy." Michael didn't respond. "You happy for her?" she asked. Michael turned to her slowly. "You want me to be honest?" Elena nodded. "I don't want her to be alone," he said. "But I don't want to feel like I've been replaced in my own family." Elena moved closer. Her voice softened. "Replaced, but I need to know that I'm not just..." Michael took her face in his hands. "You are my peace, Elena." She closed her eyes. He kissed her, slow, deep, urgent. The kind of kiss that says, "I'm here now. I survived for this." His hands moved beneath her shirt, tracing the shape of her back, the curve of her hips. She climbed into his lap, straddling him on the bench beneath the stars. Their bodies moved in rhythm, not frantic, slow, sensual, patient. Her lips trembled against his neck. His hand slid beneath the waistband of her pants. The cold night air did nothing to cool their fire. They made love silently, passionately, under the faint flicker of distant campfire light. She whispered his name like a vow. He held her like a prayer. 2 nights later, Lisa walked with Lee through the vineyard ruins. The stars above were clearer than she'd seen in years. Her fingers brushed his. "You look different," Lee said, calmer. Lisa smiled. "Been a long time since I had somewhere I could rest." They walked to the edge of the orchard and stopped. He turned to her, brushing a curl from her cheek. "I wanted to tell you, I thought about you every damn day," Lisa's voice caught. "I didn't think you made it." Lee cupped her face. "I did. For you." Their kiss was urgent, clumsy, desperate, then slower, more deliberate. She clung to him, eyes closed, lips tasting his, their breath mixing in the cool air. He laid her down in the tall grass, covering her body with his, and they surrendered to each other, finally, fully, under the quiet moonlight. Back in the storage room, Alicia was writing again. Entry 34, fault lines. Mom's laughing again, "It's weird." Elena's smiling again, "It's weird too. Dad still walks like he's carrying every choice he's ever made. And me? I'm watching. I always watch. There's someone else new in the camp. A boy. Jeremiah Kent. He's tall, got shoulders like he'd been lifting water barrels since birth. He smiled at me today, and I smiled back. I'm not sure what that means yet. She closed the notebook and smiled to herself. Chapter 4. Hunger and Heat. The summer heat was unforgiving, not just in the way it dried up the creek that once ran through the edge of the vineyard, or how it turned the air thick like soup, but in how it revealed things. True things. Dark things. Hunger made people honest. The water barrels were running low. The foraging parties hadn't come back with much in days. Cold hush of survival had been replaced with something. Michael stood at the center of camp, arms folded, shirt soaked through with sweat. Around him, the voices of 20 people argued like waves crashing against steel. Said the solar irrigation would power the garden. The greens are dead. We need to leave. There's more down near Napa. This is our land. If you want to go, go. It was Marcus who snapped first. A tall ex-engineer turned field cook. He slammed a tin bowl to the dirt. You brought more mouths to feed, Mike, he shouted. Now you looking at us like we're the ones supposed to make it work? Michael didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. You want me to say I messed up? He said calmly. Fine. I messed up. I didn't know the supply line from Richmond was going to fall. I didn't know we'd lose power 3 days this week. But I do know this. Everybody here is still breathing. That means we can still figure it out. Together, Marcus stared at him, then turned and stormed off. Michael sighed. Inside the old storage shed, Lisa sat hunched over with Ava in her lap. Cairo was laying beside her, listless. They were hungry, too hungry to cry. Lee walked in with half a boiled potato and handed it to Lisa. She cut it in thirds with the rusted knife. No meat again? She asked. Lee shook his head. No traps hit. He knelt in front of Ava, giving her his softest smile. Want the biggest piece, little mama? Ava shook her head no. She took the smallest. Lisa looked at him, eyes glassy. They ain't had protein in 2 days. I know. Maybe we should move on, she whispered. Head south. Try Salinas. Lee stood. We move now, we die. They're already fighting over supplies down that way. Lisa leaned back, frustrated, her mind flashing to memories of dinner tables that weren't filled with dirt and sweat. Her kids' bellies used to be round. Now they were shrinking. Lee knelt beside her. We'll get through this, he said. I promise you. She looked into his eyes. That night, they didn't speak much. They didn't need to. They lay close under a tattered blanket, his arms around her, her body pressed against his, slow breath, slow touch, heat building like summer thunder. Their bodies moved like waves in rhythm, exhausted, but needing the reminder that life was still worth feeling. Elena sat inside the main cabin, facing her hands. Christina sat across from her, peeling a potato with a dull blade. He's still with her? Christina asked. Elena looked up. She's the mother of his kids, she answered. She's always going to be in his life. I knew that. No, Elena said. I didn't know that part. Christina stood, walked over to her mom, and hugged her from behind. He still looks at you like you're the only thing keeping him sane. Elena sighed. That's the problem. I think I am. Michael walked past the barn and saw Alicia sitting up in the old wooden lookout tower. He climbed up slowly. She barely acknowledged him. You come up here to think? He asked. She nodded. He sat beside her. What's on your mind? Alicia pointed across the field. You see that tent? The one near the orchard? She nodded. That's where Jeremiah sleeps. Michael raised an eyebrow. The Kent boy? Yeah. Michael said nothing. Alicia looked him in the eyes. You going to tell me I'm too young? I was 17 once, he said. I know how it feels, but this world, it's different now. We don't get do-overs. We don't get second chances. Alicia looked out again. Then shouldn't we love while we can? Michael studied her. The way she held her chin high, but her eyes were scared underneath. He saw Lisa in her. He saw himself, too. Just be careful, he said. Don't give pieces of yourself to people who don't plan to hold them with both hands. She smiled. He got big hands. Michael laughed. Too much information. That night, the camp heard a noise, rustling, voices, gunshots. The attack was swift. A group of ragged survivors, desperate, starved, wild-eyed, had breached the western fence using old riot shields and flaming bottles. The vineyards lit up in patches. Screams rang out. Michael sprinted toward the chaos, rifle slung over his shoulder. Marcus was already there, firing into the darkness. Elena ran out of the cabin with a blade and a torch. Christina followed, shielding the kids. Lisa grabbed a weapon, too. So did Lee. They fought hand-to-hand, toe-to-toe. Michael tackled one intruder to the dirt, slamming his head into the mud. Elena gutted a man with precision. Lisa protected Ava and Cairo like a lioness. Alicia found Christina, both girls dragging a wounded boy into shelter. And when it was over, 6 invaders lay dead, 2 from their camp wounded. No one else was lost. Michael stood in the center of it all, chest heaving, blood on his hands. Elena walked to him. You led them, she whispered. You held us together. Michael didn't respond. He just looked out over the broken vineyard, smoke rising from the grapes that would never be picked. We need more than hope now, he said. We need power. Chapter 5. Fire at the Gates. The fires had been extinguished, but their smoke still clung to the air like memory. For the first time in weeks, the camp woke to silence. No arguing, no barking dogs, no hunger-mad strangers pounding on the fences. Just that eerie kind of quiet where everyone was still breathing, but none of them knew what to say. Michael stood over the vineyard hills, staring out as the sun rose behind burnt branches. His knuckles were still raw from the night before. Behind him, footsteps. He didn't turn. He didn't have to. "I know that walk," he said. "You thinking too much again." Elena stepped beside him, arms crossed under a loose cotton robe. Her hair was wrapped, eyes tired but soft. "Thinking about us," she said. Michael finally looked at her. "You're still here. I'm always here. Even when you're in your own head." She leaned against him. Her hand slid under his shirt, fingertips running across his stomach, his chest. "You never told me what you dreamed of before all this," she whispered. "I used to want to build houses," he said. "One for each of my kids. Make sure they never had to beg anyone for a roof." "You're still building," she said. "Just not with wood." She kissed him, slow, deliberate, and this time he didn't hold back. He pulled her closer, their mouths crashing with the kind of passion only war and hunger could ignite. Her robe slipped off one shoulder, then the other. He laid her down on a patch of sun-warmed grass behind the chicken shed, hidden from view. Their bodies moved together like music, a soft rhythm rising with the early light. His lips traced her collarbone. Her fingers clawed through his hair. It wasn't just sex. It was survival with intention, a ceremony. Two broken people reminding each other they were alive. When it was over, Elena rested her head on his chest. Her voice was calm, full of hope. "You're not just surviving anymore, Mike. You're rebuilding." Later that week, Michael gathered a small team, Alicia, Reggie, and Christina, and headed toward the old junkyard near Yountville. They found broken panels, wire coils, copper, a shattered RV with a functioning inverter. It took days, but they brought it all back piece by piece. Michael stayed up late wiring them together. And finally, one night, the light bulb over the mess hall flickered on. Cheers erupted. Children laughed again. Even Marcus, the same man who once called Michael a problem, clapped him on the back and grinned. "Didn't think you had it in you." Michael smiled. "Neither did I." Meanwhile, Lee and Lisa were growing closer by the day. They worked side by side in the irrigation trench, took turns reading to Ava and Cairo at night, and one afternoon Lisa walked up behind him and wrapped her arms around his waist. "I'm ready," she said quietly. That night, in a tent lit by soft solar glow, they made love for the second time since reuniting, this time slower, with fewer tears and more warmth. Lisa kissed his chest, his neck, rode him like she remembered every inch of him, moved like they were rediscovering a map only there. Afterward, Lisa laid with her head on his chest, fingers splayed across his ribs. "I could get used to this kind of quiet," she said. Lee kissed her forehead. "Then let's make it last." But not all love was so simple. Alicia sat near the orchard, legs dangling from a crate, watching the camp glow for the first time in weeks. Jeremiah Kent stood across from her, sharpening a blade on a flat stone. "You keep looking at me like I'm about to disappear," he said without looking up. "Because people around me do," Alicia replied. He met her gaze. "I'm not going anywhere." Alicia walked over and stood so close she could feel the heat coming off him. "You better mean that," she said. He took her hand, pulled her close. "Let me prove it." Their kiss was electric, quick, hungry, Alicia's first real taste of desire. But she didn't flinch. She leaned in, pressing against him like she already knew this was her future. Entry 47, Alicia's journal. "The camp is glowing. People are touching each other again without fear, but there's still fire beyond the hills. Dad looks lighter. Elena looks in love, and I'm falling too. Jeremiah kissed me like the world wasn't ending anymore. I'm scared of what that means." But peace didn't last. A scout returned from the North Road with blood on his face, collapsed at the gates, and before they could carry him inside, he gasped one final warning. "California's pushing east. The Texas lines are coming. They're taking everything." Michael clenched his jaw. Elena came to his side. "What do we do?" "We hold," he said. "We don't fold. Not now." He turned to Alicia, then to Lisa and Lee, then the rest of the camp. "There's fire at the gates," he said. "But we've already walked through worse. Now we stand together, or we fall like the rest." They didn't cheer, but they didn't walk away either. The line had been drawn. Chapter 6, Lines in the Dirt. The morning sun rose, but there was no warmth in its light. The camp was restless. The solar lights hummed faintly, but no one wanted to sit under their glow for long. Too many eyes watched the horizon where California's fires marched east, closer than ever. Michael stood outside the main gate, dust stirring at his boots. He had spent the night drafting terms, planning to meet leaders from nearby camps for a fragile alliance. Marcus approached, a grim look on his face. "They say the Texans are closer than we thought. Heard their scouts hit Dunnigan Bridge yesterday." Michael nodded. "We don't have time to wait." Elena came out with Christina, who looked worn but determined. Michael's gaze lingered on his girlfriend's daughter, a reminder of what they were fighting for. Inside the tent where Alicia kept her journal, she sat hunched over, biting her lip. Jeremiah Kent was gone for the day, scouting again. Alicia felt the weight of the camp's tension pressing against her chest. She ran a hand over the faded photograph of her mother, Lisa, tucked inside her journal. Her mother had been quiet since moving here. The awkwardness between Lisa and Elena had not eased, though Lisa tried hard to mask it behind forced smiles and polite words. Alicia hated seeing her dad caught between two worlds. Later, Lisa and Lee came back from a hunting trip, bloody but victorious. Lee carried a buck slung over his shoulder, a rare prize in these times. Lisa's eyes caught Alicia's and she gave a tired smile. "We'll eat tonight," Lisa whispered. Alicia nodded. "Good." Michael met with the camp leaders in the cracked community hall, a repurposed school gym with broken windows and makeshift barricades. The air was thick with smoke and distrust. Jorge, the leader of the Campbell camp, was blunt. "We want supplies, Michael. Food, water, weapons." Michael glanced around the circle. "We all want the same. We survive by sharing, not hoarding." Murmurs filled the room. "Easy for you to say? Your camp's got power. Lights." Marcus interjected. "We're all hanging on by a thread. If we fight each other, the Texans will pick us off one by one." Elena stepped forward. "The only way through this is together. We have technology, solar power, irrigation, but it's useless if we're at war with each other." Jorge narrowed his eyes. "And what if one of your people betrays us?" Michael fixed him with a hard look. "Then we deal with it. But I'm betting we're stronger than that." The meeting ended without agreement, but with a tentative truce. Back at camp, Alicia found herself alone near the orchard. Jeremiah appeared beside her, eyes tired but warm. "You ready to give up on us?" he asked. "No," she said softly. "I'm just scared." He took her hand. "I'll be back soon, I promise." She watched him walk away, feeling the sharp edge of fear and hope twisting inside her. That night, a scream shattered the uneasy calm. A fire had broken out near the storage tents. People rushed to douse the flames, but it spread fast. Weapons were drawn. Shouts rang out. Lisa grabbed Ava and Cairo, pulling them close. "We have to move," she yelled. Michael sprinted toward the blaze, Elena right behind. Marcus fought off two intruders trying to sneak supplies away. Alicia grabbed a knife, running to help. The camp fought fiercely, desperate to hold their home. But as the last embers died, Michael saw the damage, supplies lost. Food gone, and worst of all, Lee was missing. The next morning, silence fell. Michael sat by the fire pit, staring into ashes. Elena rested her hand on his shoulder. "We'll find him. We have to." Alicia approached quietly, holding a folded piece of paper. It was a note from Lee, left in the chaos. "If you want peace, meet me at the crossroads. I'll bring the proof of what's coming." Michael looked up. "This war," he said, voice low, "it's bigger than us, bigger than California or Texas. It's about who controls the future." Elena's eyes held his. "Then we fight, not just to survive, but to win." Chapter 7, Crossroads. The note was folded, stained with dirt and a hint of blood. Michael turned it over in his hands, heart heavy with every thought of Lee. Lost, missing, maybe worse. He tightened the strap on his backpack and looked around the camp one last time. Elena, Alicia, Lisa, the kids, all depending on him to bring back hope. He wasn't sure if he was the man for the job anymore, but the war didn't care. The crossroads Lee mentioned was a dusty intersection outside the remnants of an old gas station halfway between the camps. It was a place marked by rusted signs and empty bottles, a crossroads for wanderers and survivors alike. Michael set out with Marcus and Reggie, armed and alert. Hours into the journey, the sun was merciless. Michael's mind flickered to Alicia's voice, her worry, her journal entries, the way Jeremiah's presence softened her walls. He wished he could protect her from everything, but especially from this war. As they neared the crossroads, they found signs of a struggle, broken glass, scattered bullets, a bloodied scrap of... Suddenly, voices echoed from the ruins. Michael raised his rifle, signaling the others, moved cautiously, ducking behind a burned-out car. The group froze. One man reached for a gun. "Wait," Michael shouted. "We're not here to fight." The woman stood slowly. "We have information about the war," she said, "about the terrorists who started it." Michael listened as she revealed a terrifying truth. The war between California and Texas wasn't just about resources. It was orchestrated by a shadow group aiming to destabilize the states and seize control. Lee had found evidence, proof that could unite the camps against a common enemy. That night, under a canopy of stars, Michael shared the news with the camp. Elena's eyes glistened with hope. Lisa stood quietly, clutching her youngest twins. Alicia watched Jeremiah from across the yard, her fingers tight on his arm. But peace was fragile. That same night, a distant explosion shook the camp. Michael knew the war wasn't over. It had only just begun. Chapter 8, The Enemy Within. The blast tore through the early morning calm like a curse. Michael's heart jumped into his throat. He grabbed Elena's hand as chaos erupted. Alarms, shouts, children screaming. "Get the kids!" Michael barked. Was already moving, gathering Ava and Cairo close. Alicia ran toward the perimeter, Jeremiah close behind her. The camp was under attack, but this time it wasn't just raiders. From the shadows emerged figures dressed in stolen uniforms. Former allies turned enemies. Came with fire, with knives, with hate fueled by fear. Michael fought alongside Marcus, Reggie, and the others. Bullets flew, fists collided, blood stained the dry earth. Elena shouted, pulling Christina to safety, protecting the twins, but Michael caught the flicker of... Alicia ducked behind a toppled crate, heart pounding as she watched Jeremiah take down a man twice his size. For the first time, she felt the sharp sting of loss, the terrifying possibility that this love might be ripped away by war. Hours later, the invaders were repelled, but not without cost. Lee was gone, disappeared during the fight. Several fighters were wounded, some lost. Michael's hands trembled as he checked the makeshift medical tents. Elena wrapped her arms around him. "We'll survive this. Together." Lisa approached, voice steady but eyes guarded. "We need to talk about trust, about who's really here for us." That night, around the fire, Michael laid out a plan. They would build better defenses, harness the solar power for surveillance, and most importantly, unite the camps against the shadow group orchestrating the chaos. But suspicion gnawed at the edges of their fragile family. Lisa and Elena exchanged tense glances, the past shadowing every word. Alicia struggled to keep her secret, the growing fire for Jeremiah and the fear it might destroy everything. Michael looked at his children, at the families gathered under the starlit sky. The world was broken, but they were still here, and he would fight, not just for survival, but for the chance to rebuild a future worth living. Chapter 9, New Dawn. Dawn broke slow and heavy over the camp, the sky bruised purple and orange. Michael stood at the edge of the perimeter, watching the first rays touch the solar panels he'd helped build, a small victory born from desperation. Elena came up behind him, her breath warm on his neck. "We made it through the night." He turned, pulling her into a slow embrace. The tension of battle gave way to something softer, charged with unspoken promises. Inside the camp, Lisa and Lee had returned, weary but alive. Their arrival brought relief and a strange new energy. Lisa's eyes met Elena's across the yard, a quiet truce settling between them. Though neither spoke it aloud, both knew they had to coexist for the kids, for survival. Alicia woke early, her thoughts tangled between Jeremiah and the uncertain future. Jeremiah found her near the orchard, where the first wildflowers had begun to bloom. "We'll get through this," he said, voice low but certain. She nodded, heart pounding, grateful for the small light he brought into the darkness. That day the camp buzzed with activity. Marcus and Michael worked with engineers from nearby camps to improve defenses and expand the solar grid. Elena organized the children, teaching them how to ration food and protect themselves. The younger twins, her smile growing warmer each, but the war was far from over. Reports came in. California and Texas still clashed violently over dwindling resources. The terrorist shadow lingered, a threat ready to ignite again. He held her close, their skin pressed together in the cool night air. "Whatever comes," Michael whispered, "we'll face it, together." Elena smiled, her fingers tracing slow patterns down his chest. Their passion burned fierce and tender, a reminder of life amidst ruin. Meanwhile, Lisa and Lee found their own moments of peace, rebuilding love in the cracks left by war. It was uncertain, but for the first time, hope felt real. Chapter 10, Rising Shadows. The camp stirred with uneasy energy. Michael stood over the map table, tracing lines with a callous finger, supply routes, enemy movements, rumored safe zones. Elena handed him a cup of bitter coffee, her eyes sharp and alert. "We can't ignore the signs," she said quietly. "They're planning something bigger." Alicia sat with Jeremiah near the orchard, the weight of the world heavy between their shared silences. "We can't just hope for peace," Alicia said. "We have to fight for it, for us, for everyone." Jeremiah nodded, tightening his grip on her hand. Across camp, Lisa and Lee worked to strengthen ties with nearby groups, knowing survival meant building trust. Yet shadows lurked even within their own walls. Whispers of betrayal slipped through cracks, a traitor feeding information to the enemy. Michael's gut twisted with worry. Gunfire lit the darkness as friends and foes clashed. Alicia found herself face to face with a mask. Jeremiah leapt to protect her, his fierce determination igniting a spark of hope amid destruction. When dawn came, the camp was scarred but unbroken. The traitor was revealed, a bitter reminder that the greatest battles often come from within. As the sun rose higher, Michael gathered his family. "We've lost much," he said, voice steady but heavy, "but we still have each other. And together we'll build a future no war can take." Elena leaned into him. Lisa stood close with the twins. Alicia held Jeremiah's hand, and Michael Jr. Chris, Ava, and Kyra watched with eyes full of growing courage. The war between the states raged on, California clashing with Texas, but here in this fragile corner of the world, a new dawn was rising. Chapter 11, The Long Road Ahead. The air was thick with dust and the scent of burnt wood. Michael stood at the edge of camp, watching his children play in the fading light, Alicia's laughter ringing clear despite the heaviness in his chest. Years had passed since the war erupted, yet every day was a battle. The solar panels hummed quietly, a testament to their resilience and hard work. Approached, her eyes reflecting pride and, "We're building something here," she said softly. "Not just surviving, living." Michael smiled, pulling her close. Their child, a boy with dark eyes and a fierce spirit, slept nearby, a new beginning born from fire and fear. Lisa and Lee had left months ago, carving out their own place beyond the camps. Alicia had watched them go, a bittersweet ache deep inside, had grown stronger, a fragile light in a world still. The battles between California and Texas still raged, but whispers of peace floated on the wind. Michael gathered his family one evening under a sky painted with stars. "We've come far," he said, voice steady. "But the road ahead is long." Alicia squeezed Jeremiah's hand. Elena smiled at Michael, her eyes shining with unspoken promises. The world was healing, slowly, painfully. But Michael knew the war wasn't just out there. It was inside each of them, in every choice, every sacrifice. And as the first dawn of peace broke over the horizon, one thing was clear. They would face the long road ahead, together. Chapter 12, Inside the Dome. By 2050, the sky wasn't blue anymore. It was a faded mix of smog, smoke, and memory. Birds didn't fly overhead, drones did. And in the distance, standing tall like a god's glass coffin, was the dome. The one place on Earth where the air was clean, food was plenty, and the poor weren't allowed in, unless you were one of the chosen, unless you passed the trials. And that's what me and Ava were training for. "Keep your back low," Ava shouted. I ducked under the collapsing beam, rolled through the gravel, and came up at the target wall. Sweat burned my eyes. My lungs felt like they were filling with cement, but I pushed through. At the top of the wall, Ava was already there, hand outstretched. She grinned. "Took you long enough." I took her hand and climbed. We sat up top together, looking out at the Valley of the Damned, what used to be Northern California. Past the junkyards and ghost farms was the dome, stretching up into the cloud-thick sky, pulsing with artificial life. Only a handful of teens our age were accepted into the academy each year. Winners of the trial, kids with enough speed, strength, and brains to matter, kids who passed the obstacle. But the truth was, it wasn't just about merit. It was politics, image, influence. If your bloodline didn't hold weight, you had to be twice as good. And that's where our name came in. Michael Sr., people still whispered about him, the man who walked through fire to save his children, who built solar energy out of wreckage, who held camps together with grit and love when the world was falling apart. Even the guards in the outer district said his name with respect. His legacy was a coat we wore, not always comfortable, but it kept us warm. Uncle Lee always said the academy could change everything. He'd roll up in one of his rebuilt rides, chrome wheels gleaming like they remembered when the world still cared, and lean back with that gold-toothed smile. "You kids get in that dome," he'd say, "and you flip the script from the inside. Real power don't always come with a weapon. Sometimes it come with access." We loved Lee. He spoke truth. But me, I ain't care about access. I wanted vengeance. And Ava, she wanted answers. Mama Alicia wasn't fond of the academy, not since her husband died in the line of duty, defending a rebel tunnel that led into the dome's infrastructure. She'd raised us like soldiers, taught us to fight, think, survive, but that pain in her eyes, it never faded. Not since she buried Anthony's father with a bulletproof vest and a broken dream. Now she was a general of the resistance, not just any fighter, but the one they followed. She commanded squads across the old valley, raiding dome convoys, disrupting data routes, keeping people fed. And somehow between it all, she still showed up to tuck Anthony in and make sure our younger siblings had boots on their feet. They called him Commander M now, said he had our father's soul and our mother's fire. He kept the community alive, organized trades, rebuilt filtration lines, taught the younger boys to defend what was theirs. But he wasn't just trying to survive, he wanted to break the dome. He wanted the world to remember that outside the walls, people bled too. And then there was Elena, still in the garden, still growing hope. She never remarried, said Michael Sr. took the part of her heart no one else could reach. Now she raised medicinal plants, mentored the midwives, whispered old wisdom to anyone still quiet enough to listen. "Don't ever forget the earth don't belong to no dome," she told us once, handing Ava a bundle of dried mint. "It belonged to the ones who bleed for it." And President Bill didn't bleed for anything. He stood inside the dome's control tower, clean-suited and smiling like a preacher on TV, promising order, stability, prosperity. But his laws made it clear, If you were poor, you stayed out. If you were powerful, you stayed in. That's why the academy mattered. If we could get in, even just one of us, we'd have eyes on the inside. Access, leverage. But if we failed, we'd be stuck out here forever, scraping for crumbs. Tomorrow was the trials. Ava and I stood side by side on the hilltop, looking down at the obstacle course. A maze of fire, mud, drones, and memory tests. You scared? I asked. She nodded. Yeah. I smirked. Good. Me too, we bumped fists. For Alicia, for the ones under the dome who forgot what real life looked like, and for the ones out here who still fought for it. Chapter 13, Bloodline and Burden, told from Ava's perspective. I woke up with dirt in my mouth and a heartbeat like a war drum in my chest. The trials had already begun. The whistle blasted through the fog like a shot, and just like that, I was running. I didn't look for Cairo. I didn't look back. You don't survive out here by hesitating. The first obstacle was a ravine with smoke plumes rising from the edges. They'd simulated fire, chaos, like we hadn't already lived it for real. But this was more than a test of strength. It was a test of memory. A screen flickered as I crossed the checkpoint. What was your father's legacy? The AI asked, voice cold and clipped. I didn't hesitate. Michael Sr. was a leader, a builder, a protector. He sacrificed everything to keep people alive. The screen blinked green. Correct. But deep inside, I wondered what that meant for me. Was I just his echo, or was I more? The rest of the course got harder. It wasn't just climbing and crawling. It was psychological. Choices between saving a teammate or finishing faster. Questions about dome law, history, loyalty. Some kids lied. I saw it in their faces. Those born inside perimeter zones who only knew privilege. Then there were people like Kyle. Tall, quick, calculating. Dome-born but trained like a soldier. He never stumbled, never hesitated, but never helped anyone either. The third gate, he told me when we ended up at the... I shrugged. Saving a kid, he smirked. Dead weight gets you dead. At night, they locked us in dorm pods. Sterile, cold, cameras in every corner. To the same pod quadrant as me. He looked beat. I passed phase 2, he whispered, tossing me a ration bar. I bit into it like it was gold. Lee'd be proud, he added. That hit me, because I miss Lee more than I expected. Not just because he dropped wisdom and drove dope cars, but because he believed in us, not just as kids of a legend, but as our own people. Meanwhile, back at camp, I knew things were shifting. Mama, General Alicia, was under pressure. Intel said a dome transport had crossed her line. Soldiers armed with silent guns. Dome enforcers don't negotiate. Anthony, her son, had been getting nightmares. About his dad. About her never coming back from a mission. She didn't say it out loud, but I saw it in her eyes before we left. She didn't want us here. Because she knew the system wasn't built for us. President Bill gave a broadcast on day 3 of the trials. All participants were gathered in the auditorium. He stood tall in white and gold robes, smiling like he'd never seen war or hunger. Through the academy, he said, you'll earn a place in the rebirth of this nation. Sacrifice builds legacy. Loyalty ensures survival. He looked right at us, but it felt like a threat. That night I wrote in my journal, same way Alicia taught me. I don't know if this is how change starts. Maybe you got to sit at their table just to flip it over. Maybe I'm not here to win. Maybe I'm here to remind them they don't get to forget us. Cairo snored softly beside me, battle-worn but still dreaming. I stared at the ceiling. They didn't know us yet, but they would. Chapter 14, Fires in the Garden, told from a shared perspective, Alicia, Michael Jr., and Cairo. The moment the dome convoy rolled past Sector 12, I knew we had one shot. Intel said it was a scientific transport, no heavier than a few guards, mostly researchers, probably headed to a black site for oxygen control tests. But to me, that truck meant leverage. I gave the signal. My squad, dressed in dirt and desperation, surrounded the path. No gunfire, just precision. We dropped gas canisters from the trees and moved fast. 3 guards down. 2 scientists surrendered. 1 we let go to send a message. Inside the truck, we found the jackpot, oxygen regulators, injectable nanofiber boosters, and encrypted tablets marked Academy only. My chest tightened. Ava and Cairo, they were in deeper than I thought. And the president? He wasn't running an academy, he was building an army. Michael Jr. I watched Alicia's team roll in from the north, blood on their boots, fire in their eyes. Anthony clung to his mother like she was the last honest person in a corrupt world. I knew that feeling. I felt it when Dad walked back into camp that first time, half dead and all heart. I met Alicia at the edge of the community pit. You're pushing it, I said. She didn't answer right away, just handed me one of the encrypted tablets. Read this. I did. And what I saw made my blood run cold. The dome's long-term strategy wasn't survival. It was submission, genetic screening, social obedience testing, memory wiping. They were turning selected youth into programmable units, wiping out the wild spirit the outside world raised in kids like Ava and Cairo. Cairo, I couldn't sleep. The food was too clean, the walls too smooth, everything in the academy dorm felt hollow. And Kyle, he watched everything. I'd been trailing him during one of the skill evaluations when I saw him sneak into a restricted corridor. I followed, quiet like Dad taught me. What I found made my stomach twist. Inside that corridor were pods. Sleeper cells. Kids from previous trials, unconscious, monitored, forgotten. I snapped a picture on my wristwatch chip and dipped out before Kyle spotted me. Back in my room, Ava was waiting. "You good?" she asked. I shook my head. "They ain't just testing us," I whispered. "They prepping us like assets." Her jaw clenched. "We got to tell someone, but we couldn't." "Not yet." Elena. Back home, I felt it in the soil before I saw it in the sky. Smoke. Not from a campfire, but from sabotage. Somebody had burned a quarter of my crops, torched the greenhouse with the nutrient-rich greens I'd been saving for the newborns and the sick. I dropped to my knees in the ash, hands shaking. Then I saw it, a sigil spray-painted on the side of the rain tank, a dome with a crown, and they wanted us to know. Alicia. We held a meeting that night in the bunker room. Michael Jr. slammed the dome tablet on the table. Elena stood tall, quiet, with soot still in her hair. Lisa and Lee had arrived just in time, bringing upgraded drone parts and tools for repair. But all eyes were on me. "We got one chance," I said, "before they launch the next phase." Michael Jr. nodded. "We don't just defend anymore. The room, my son at my hip, my siblings still trapped, and fire in my voice. We take the fight to the dome." Chapter 15, Blood Turned Cold. Told from Christina and Chris's perspective. Christina. I stopped telling people where I was from. When they asked, I'd say Zone 7, special intake. Not outside the dome, not raised by Elena, protected by Michael, born to a rebel. I scrubbed it all out, every trace. And me and Chris, we wanted power. The military program here was different. Clean, cold, structured. We trained 6 days a week, ran simulations on the 7th. We were elite, not because we were smarter, but because we were willing to forget. Forget what they did to keep us alive, forget the hunger, forget the struggle. Chris took to it faster than I did. He shaved his head, wore the white armored uniform like it meant something holy, marched like every order was a command from God himself. And when they assigned us to Task Unit 0, Cleaners for Rebel Interference, we didn't flinch. Chris. I used to follow Michael Jr. like a shadow, but he left us behind. He chose the outside, the chaos, the scraps. In here I had structure, meals, heat, respect. They told me the rebels were destabilizing peace, that Alicia was just a warlord hiding behind the memory of her father, that Cairo and Ava were threats to the dome's future. And for the first time, I believed it, because the dome worked, and the outside, it just survived. They called us in on a recon op to monitor an outer camp, unmarked territory near a water canal. The moment I saw the satellite image, I froze. It was Elena's land, the orchard, the greenhouse. A part of me screamed. But Chris? He didn't even blink. "They're using the crops for trade with rogue camps," he said. "Violation of Sustainability Law 47B. I stared at him like he wasn't my cousin anymore. He turned and looked me dead in the eye. "This is where we are now. We're not kids anymore. This isn't about family. It's about future. The dome gave us a name, a purpose, a life without fear. And if that means going against the blood that raised us, so be it." Christina. But at night, I dream of Elena's voice, of Michael's hand on my shoulder telling me to stay strong, of Ava braiding my hair, down. I press harder in training. I aim straighter. But it's getting harder to forget where I came from, and harder to live with what I've become. Chapter 16, Operation Iron Sky. Told from multiple perspectives, Cairo, Ava, Alicia, and Michael Jr. Cairo. I knew it was coming, the shift, the fracture. Something inside the academy was changing, not just in the teachers or the tech, but in the way people looked at us. We're no longer the underdogs with potential. We. The trial results were delayed. Surveillance drones started hovering longer outside our dorms. Kyle stopped making smart comments and just watched, calculating. And that's when we saw it, Christina. In full dome military uniform, walking next to Chris like they were born for it, stone-faced, void of everything we used to be. Ava's jaw tightened. I felt it in my chest, too. The sharp pull of betrayal. Ava. They didn't just switch sides, they erased us. Chris didn't even blink when we passed him in the glass corridor. Christina hesitated. I saw it, just for a second. Like some part of her still remembered the campfires, Elena's stories, playing tag in the orchard, but then it was gone. They were domed now, clean, controlled. Alicia, when Michael Jr. showed me the intel Cairo sent, encrypted through a hacked satellite ping, my blood ran cold. Christina. Inside the dome military. Not just enlisted, but loyal. I lost soldiers before. I'd buried family, but nothing felt like this. This was blood turned against blood. And the worst part, I still loved them. I still saw their baby faces when I closed my eyes. But war don't wait for healing. We held council that night in the underground bunker. Michael Jr. stood tall with a new plan, Operation Iron Sky. Objective, infiltrate the dome through the lower oxygen tunnels and breach the Academy's lower levels. Secondary objective, extract Ava and Cairo. Tertiary objective, plant charges to disable the mind-wipe program stored in their AI core. It was risky, but it had to be done. Elena, standing behind me in silence, finally stepped forward. "There's something else," she said. "I found it." Elena. The soul was speaking again. Beneath the last surviving patch of lavender in the ash fields, I found a buried vault. One Michael Sr. built long before the dome. Inside, old journals, blueprints, seeds, a flash drive, contained footage of Michael Sr. talking to the camera. "If they take the sky, you take the soil. If they take your name, you make it louder. Don't let them make you forget who you are." I gave the drive to Michael Jr. He didn't cry, but something changed in his eyes. We got the message. The plan was set. Ava and I were getting out, one way or another, but deep down, I knew we'd see Chris and Christina again. Not as cousins, not as family, but on the battlefield. And one of us wasn't walking away. Chapter 17, Breach the Dome, told from Cairo, Alicia, and Christina's perspectives. Cairo. The oxygen tunnels were colder than I expected. Metal walls, no lights. Just the hiss of recycled air and the low hum of a world built on secrets. Ava crawled ahead of me, quiet, focused, like the darkness didn't faze her. Lee had built us a device to loop the dome sensors. We had 5 minutes at a time before we'd have to switch frequencies. Anything longer, and we'd be fried like rats in a microwave. "You nervous?" I whispered. Ava didn't turn around. "Only about what happens after..." We reached the breach point, a service panel hidden beneath the Academy's East Tower. Michael Jr.'s crew had created a microbomb that would short the lock and release a gas to disorient guards. I held the trigger. Ava looked at me. On 3, 1, 2, boom, Alicia. We hit the dome in waves, not through the main gates. That would have been suicide. We came through the filtration line beneath the agriculture bay. My unit moved with silence and fury, slicing through guards like ghosts. Inside the dome, everything was clean, too clean. It smelled like plastic and recycled lies. We planted our charges at the AI node base. Then we split up. My job was to find Ava and Cairo. Michael Jr.'s, get the flash drive to the central tower. He wore Dad's old jacket, the one with the burn mark on the sleeve. When he looked back at me, I knew he was ready to die for this. Christina. Alarms rang through the dome like war drums. We suited up. Chris checked his rifle with calm precision. I strapped in, trying not to let my hands shake. "They're here," he said. "The rebels..." "No, not rebels. Our family." I clenched my teeth, tried to shove down the memory of Elena's hands planting seeds, the way Ava used to laugh with no fear in her voice. Orders came in. Engage the intruders. Show no mercy. I looked at Chris. "Let's move," he said. And we did. Cairo. The hallway exploded in front of us. Ava and I dove behind a service cart. I peeked over the edge and my stomach dropped. Christina. She was leading the squad. Chris. Helmet off. Eyes locked on mine. My cousin didn't blink. He raised his rifle. "You don't belong here," he said. I stepped forward. "We built this place. You just forgot." Ava moved to my side. "You gonna shoot us, Chris?" He hesitated for half a second. Then, gunfire. Not from Chris. From the shadows behind us. Alicia's squad swarmed in. "Fall back!" someone yelled. The hallway lit up in muzzle flashes and sparks. And in the chaos, me and Ava ran. Alicia. I saw Christina hesitate. Saw the way she lowered her gun when Ava called her name. But Chris? He didn't blink. He fired. Didn't hit them. Not yet. But I saw the truth in his aim. He was lost. And that broke something in me. We regrouped at the AI node. Michael Jr. was there, blood on his knuckles, flash drive in hand. "It's done," he said. "We uploaded Dad's message, a broadcast live across the dome's internal feed. Michael Sr. talking to the people. Don't forget who you are. Don't let power silence memory. We were here before the dome, and we'll be here after." Christina. The message echoed through every corridor. I froze. My hands trembled. Chris didn't speak. He just walked away. And I knew we hadn't won anything. We were just getting started. Chapter 18, The Cost of Loyalty, told from Alicia, Christina, and Ava's perspectives. Alicia. The smoke hadn't even cleared before I knew something had gone wrong. Half of Sector 3 was missing, my comms officer dead, my left flank limping. But it wasn't the losses that hit hardest, it was who didn't return. His name was Damon. Quiet, dependable, loyal to a fault. He was supposed to stay behind and cover our retreat. He had a wife, 2 daughters back at camp. He didn't make it. And when I told his wife, she didn't cry. She just nodded and said, "That's what he believed in. That's what makes this war cruel, because belief ain't enough to keep people alive." Later that night, I stood alone outside the bunker, staring at the horizon where the dome pulsed like a heartbeat. I thought of my son, of my father, of Christina and Chris, 2 kids I helped raise, 2 kids who now pulled triggers for the other side. I wanted to hate them, but hate's too heavy to carry in a war this long. I carry purpose instead, and I will not let their betrayal stop me. Christina. The promotion came quick, too quick. Major Soren placed the silver badge on my chest and called me a loyal enforcer of dome stability. I nodded, smiled, saluted, but inside I was hollow. Every night I watched Michael Sr.'s message on a loop, rebel manipulation. I told myself it was propaganda, but I couldn't shake it. I remembered that man. I remembered what he gave for his kids, for us, and now we were hunting them. Chris didn't flinch. He got quieter, more efficient. He followed orders like his soul had been erased, and maybe it had, but mine was still fighting. I went to the viewing deck, the only place the dome felt honest. No lights, just the stars. There I saw Kyle, not in uniform, just watching the sky. "You see them too, don't you?" he asked. I turned my head. "See what?" "The cracks in the dome. In us, Ava. We'd been hiding underground for days. The AI feed was silenced. Michael Jr.'s broadcast had been scrubbed. The dome soldiers were sweeping the outer districts like shadows with badges. And me? I was tired of running. Cairo wanted to go north, regroup with Alicia. I wanted to go deeper. I'd found a passage, unmarked, hidden behind the Academy's central archive. Only students with clearance could access it. Guess what? I had clearance now. Inside were files, real ones, logs of dome experiments on poor communities, maps of camps targeted for reduction. Names, some I recognized, some already dead. But the worst was this, a classified plan called Project Rebalance, a full-scale operation to sterilize entire rebel sectors. Quiet, clinical, genocide dressed in science, stepped out of the shadows that night with fire in my. "Cairo," I said, "we burn it down, all of it." He didn't argue. He just nodded. Chapter 19, Project Rebalance, from Ava, Christina, and Michael Jr. As perspectives. Ava. The deeper I dug, the worse it got. Project Rebalance wasn't just a threat. It was already in motion. Entire camp regions were flagged with code names, excess population, genetically incompatible, and the worst one, Target Class Alpha Rebellion bred. That was us, Alicia, Michael Jr., Elena, everyone tied to Michael. They planned to cleanse the outer zones, sterilize the youth with contaminated vaccine drops, and quietly let the older generations die off from reduced medical access. A war without bullets. I felt sick. I uploaded the files to my encrypted drive and started the download protocol. That's when I heard boots. Too late. A voice in the dark, "Don't move." I turned around and froze. It was Christina. Christina. I wasn't supposed to be there. My assignment was recon near the solar grid, but something pulled me to the archives. And when I saw her, Ava, standing in the records room with trembling hands and that same defiance in her face I remembered from childhood, something cracked open in me. "Ava," I whispered. She didn't answer. She just looked at me, hurt, hard. "You gonna arrest me?" she said. I stepped forward. "No," she narrowed her eyes. "Why not?" I didn't know how to say it, how to admit that every uniform I wore felt like a coffin, that every medal I earned felt like a lie. "I've seen what they're planning," I said. I didn't know how deep it went. Ava stared for a long time, and then she handed me the drive. "Then help me stop it, Michael Jr." The dome's security was tightening. Troop movement increased. Energy fluctuations near Sector 9. I'd seen enough warfare to know they were preparing for something big. Alicia and I called a war council. The bunker was filled with voices, techs, fighters, old rebels, and a few quiet scientists who had defected. We laid it all out. The dome sterilization plan, their class system, the satellite interference scheme, and Project Rebalance. When I dropped the files on the table, silence followed like a funeral. Then Elena spoke. "If they're planning to erase us, then we leave them no choice." We called it Operation Echo. Strike from inside, expose the project, broadcast the truth, and burn the system down from its heart. But to make it work, we'd need someone inside, someone trusted, someone who wore their uniform. A knock at the door broke the tension. When we opened it, Ava stood there with Christina beside her, her badge, her uniform, her dome clearance. But her eyes, they looked like ours again. "I'm in," Christina said. "Let's finish what he started." Chapter 20, Operation Echo. Told from Michael Jr., Chris and Elena's perspectives. Michael Jr. It started with a code, a single data stream embedded in an old file marked maintenance protocol. We smuggled it in through a relay signal Christina fed from the Academy's subgrid. From there it spread. One by one, dome terminals flickered. First words on the screen, remember his name? Then came the footage. Michael Sr., weathered and wise, speaking from the flash drive he left behind. A final message for a broken nation. I wasn't a king. I wasn't a savior. I was a father who refused to let the world burn my children. If you're watching this, then the world you live in forgot how to love. But love fights back. Every damn time. The dome's network lit up in red. Sirens, lockdowns, orders screamed through comms. But it was too late. Systems scrambled to erase his voice. The people. At first, the officers tried to brush it off. Rebel propaganda, they said. System interference. But then it spread to the dorms, the cafeterias, the officers' quarters, even the tower's top floor. I saw a general throw his screen across the room, but it didn't stop the message, because something deeper was shaking now. Not just wires, loyalty, identity. I'd been given a mission, track and eliminate Cairo, and for weeks I was ready to do it. But now, watching that video, hearing his voice, remembering who I used to be, I wasn't so sure anymore. The garden bloomed again. Strange, really, how in the middle of chaos the earth still tried to grow. I walked through rows of green and yellow, whispering names to the wind. Michael, Lisa, Damon, the ones who left something behind, the ones who planted more than crops. That night I gathered the young ones, the children who hadn't yet chosen sides, about love, about resistance, about family. Then I said, tomorrow you might hear explosions, you might see fire, but don't be afraid. That's just the sound of freedom breaking through the cracks. And when they asked who would win, I smiled. The ones who remember. Michael Jr. The plan moved fast. Christina got us access to the inner tower. Ava and Cairo moved through ventilation lines. Alicia led a direct charge on the security hub. I stood in the control room, looking out at the dome, at its power, its lies, and I pulled the lever. The lights shut down. Oxygen regulators glitched. Screens everywhere blazed with Dad's final words. And outside the dome? Chapter 21, Shattered Glass. Told from Ava, Chris, and Alicia's perspectives. Ava Kale met me on the top floor of the Academy Tower, dressed in dome black, boots polished, gloves tight. He always looked sharp, unbothered, but today, he looked tired. You really think this ends with a broadcast? He said. I kept my stance, steady, one hand near my blade, the other on my belt pulse detonator. I don't think it ends, I said. I think it begins. Kyle sighed. You're not built for this world, Ava. You're too attached, too emotional. I took a step forward. You say that like it's a weakness. He reached for his weapon, but I was faster. We moved like shadows clashing. Dome train moves against raw, fire-hardened skill. He knocked my blade loose. I broke his nose. He clipped my shoulder. I cracked his ribs. We both bled. He finally landed against the window, and when I hit the emergency release, crack. The glass around us spider-webbed, the dome shivering with pressure. Kyle looked at me, eyes wide. You'd bring the whole thing down? I stared him down. Breathing hard. For every child you locked up, for the ones who... Then I kicked the panel. The window shattered. Cal fell. The dome began to bleed light. Chris. I stood at the checkpoint bridge, rifle drawn, walking toward me, unarmed, hands out, calm. Behind me, a dozen dome officers. Chris, he said, voice steady. This is your line, right here. Who you are, who you were. You get to decide. I didn't answer. He kept walking. I'm not asking you to fight with me. I'm asking you to remember. I looked down at my hands. They used to build things. Now they held a weapon I didn't believe in. Behind me, the dome commander barked, take the shot! But my arms didn't move. Instead, I dropped the gun. Cairo smiled. Welcome home, cousin. Alicia. We hit the main gate like a wave made of ghosts. Silent. Deadly. Unstoppable. Explosions cracked through the sky like thunder. My team split in two, one heading for the labs, the other toward the AI control hub. I led the third, straight to the heart. The dome was crumbling, tech stuttering under the pressure of truth. Civilians started flooding the tunnels. Guards panicked. The chain of command broke, and then I saw her, Lisa, fighting side by side with Elena, protecting evacuees. I caught her eyes. She gave a nod, and I knew we were finally one. The dome cracked, not just physically, ideologically. Power shifted. Soldiers laid down arms. The people rose up, and for the first time in decades, the sky felt like ours again. Chapter 22, Rebirth. Told from Elena, Ava, and Michael Jr. As perspectives, Elena. The dome collapsed 7 months ago. What remains now is a skeleton of steel and glass, wrapped in vines and dust. We don't tear it down. We let the earth reclaim it the way it always does. We planted sunflowers at its base. The seeds were old, ancient even, saved from the days before the wars. Michael gave them to me, said they were for when the world was ready again. I planted them with my bare hands. No gloves, no technology, just touch. The children watched. Christina's daughter helped. She's 5 now, eyes full of questions. When she asked me what we were doing, I said, we're planting proof, Ava. We live above ground now. The sky ain't perfect, but it's real. Cairo and I helped build the new council chambers, along with engineers from camps that once hated each other. Funny what survival does to old enemies, turns them into neighbors, into kin. I teach at what used to be the academy. We renamed it Legacy House. We stripped out the programs, burned the obedience tests, replaced them with books, with gardens, with combat classes taught by people who actually care about the kids. We don't teach loyalty, we teach memory. Chris lives here now too. Quiet. He spends most of his time rebuilding homes. Never asks for thanks, never wants a title. But he looks at me sometimes, like he wants to say sorry but doesn't know how. He doesn't have to. We all carry guilt now, some heavier than others. Redemption don't always come with applause. Sometimes it just shows up at sunrise with bricks in its hands and work on its back. Michael Jr. Anthony is growing fast. He fights like his mother, thinks like his grandfather, and dreams like no one else. Alicia still leads, but she smiles more now. She even laughs. Some days we visit Dad's grave. It's not much, just a marker near the old oak tree where we buried his journals. But people leave notes there, and offerings. And sometimes little kids sit by it asking questions, like he's still here. In a way, he is. They say the world is healing. I don't know if that's true, but I know we are. Slow, painful, real. The dome fell. The war has ended, or paused at least. The land breathes again, and from the ashes, we began to bloom. The end. But the legacy continues.